What if the reason you feel stuck, anxious, and quietly unhappy isn't your past, your failures, or your circumstances, but the fear of being disliked? What if the moment you stop living for approval? It is the moment your life finally becomes yours. Most of the struggles people face in life can be traced back to one quiet habit: placing too much importance on how others see you. This constant concern about outside opinions slowly becomes the foundation of dissatisfaction and inner conflict. Today, we're exploring the ideas from The Courage to be Disliked, written by Japanese philosopher and psychologist Akira Kishimi alongside author Fumite Koga. One of their central claims is that what we often call inner worry is never truly isolated. Even our most personal anxieties are deeply tied to the presence, real or imagined, of other people. According to the authors, there is no concern that exists purely within the self. The influence of others is always nearby. Life itself is not as complicated as it appears. It only feels overwhelming because we overthink it. Their argument is bold but simple. Happiness requires one essential quality: the willingness to be disliked. True freedom, they argue, begins when you stop fearing rejection. It's not that people lack self-confidence, it's that they lack the bravery to accept disapproval. They go on to explain that the courage to be happy cannot exist without the courage to be disliked. Once a person develops this mindset, their relationships begin to feel lighter and less burdensome. In this discussion, we'll break down the book's core insights: why people remain unhappy, why chasing approval leads nowhere, and how the authors believe a genuinely fulfilling life can be built. That anyone can become happy, regardless of their past. The difference between happy and unhappy individuals lies in one thing: their readiness to change. Much of their thinking is inspired by the work of psychologist Alfred Adler, whose ideas form the backbone of the book. Adler viewed the human being as a complete, unified system. Thoughts, emotions, behaviors, both conscious and unconscious, all work together toward a single aim. Even when we're unaware of it, everything we do is moving us closer to a goal. These goals don't just influence how happy we feel. They shape who we become. From this perspective, personality isn't fixed. Adler focused instead on what he called a lifestyle, the patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting that a person adopts because they believe it will help them reach their goal. Kishimi and Koga build on this idea by suggesting that behaviors we label as permanent traits are actually choices. For example, what we call antisocial behavior is not an unchangeable condition, but a strategy someone uses to achieve a certain outcome. The authors take this further by arguing that emotions themselves are tools. First, we choose a goal, and then we create the emotions that help us pursue it. Imagine someone who claims they desperately want a job, but becomes so anxious about the interview that they never prepare or show up. They may believe anxiety is blocking them, but Kishimi and Koga would argue that the real goal is avoiding failure. Fear becomes useful; it protects them from the risk of rejection. They also challenge the idea that past trauma permanently defines us. While difficult experiences may influence the goals we choose, they don't dictate our future. The authors emphasize that experiences themselves don't cause success or failure; the meaning we assign to them does. In other words, we are not shaped by what happened to us, but by how we interpret it. No matter what your past contains, it does not determine how you must live from this moment forward. If happiness is within our control, then why do people remain unhappy? Kishimi and Koga argue that unhappiness often serves a purpose. While everyone experiences frustration or disappointment at times, chronic unhappiness is usually tied to a single unresolved objective, one that revolves around relationships with others. According to the authors, overall happiness is deeply connected to the goals we set in our interactions with people. Specifically, there are two main approaches: seeking approval or aiming to contribute positively to others' lives. Unhappy individuals tend to choose the first path. They believe that being valued, praised, or seen as good by others is the key to fulfillment, but this belief leads to constant dissatisfaction. Although many assume the desire for approval is natural, Kishimi and Koga argue that it is learned, often through reward and punishment systems ingrained from childhood. Even when approval is achieved, it comes at a cost. The loss of personal freedom. Living according to others' expectations means abandoning your own values, and that trade-off eventually leads to resentment and emptiness. There's an even deeper problem with chasing approval. It's often impossible. Approval depends on other people's standards, which are outside your control. When people realize they can't consistently earn validation, they may stop trying altogether. To justify quitting, they create emotions like fear or self-loathing. They tell themselves they are flawed, unlikable, or broken. This belief protects them from risk, but it also traps them in hopelessness. The desire for recognition also damages relationships. When approval becomes the goal, life starts to feel like a competition. Others' success feels like personal failure. Standards rise, comparisons increase, and resentment grows. Instead of supporting others, unhappy people may secretly celebrate their setbacks. This competitive mindset makes genuine connection impossible. Another issue arises when relationships are built on unspoken expectations. People who constantly give in order to be liked often feel entitled to something in return. When appreciation isn't received, bitterness follows. What looks like kindness on the surface is actually a transaction, an attempt to secure validation. So what's the alternative? Kishimi and Koga suggest shifting focus away from approval and toward contribution. Happy people don't ask, "Do they like me?" Instead, they ask, "Am I being useful?" They find fulfillment in believing their presence has value to others. This sense of contribution removes the need for recognition altogether. Helping others in this framework isn't self-sacrifice, it's self-fulfillment, and that's okay. Wanting to be happy is not selfish. In fact, helping others because it brings you joy is more powerful than doing so out of obligation. Acting good just to earn praise is still approval-seeking in disguise. The authors also argue that simply existing has value. You don't need extraordinary achievements to matter. Human beings naturally influence one another, and your presence alone can bring comfort or meaning to someone else's life. When people understand this, they can accept themselves fully, even with their flaws. Because happy individuals see value in everyone, they don't feel threatened by others' success. Life stops being a competition. Someone else winning doesn't mean they've lost. Their worth remains intact. Finally, Kishimi and Koga emphasize living in the present. Happiness isn't something you earn later after reaching a milestone. It's available now. While goals are important, meaning should be found in the journey itself. That way, no matter when life ends, it won't feel wasted. The central message of the book is simple but uncomfortable. No matter how you live, some people will dislike you. Since that outcome is unavoidable, the only path to lasting happiness is accepting it and choosing to live according to your own values anyway. That is the true meaning of having the courage to be disliked.